one very significant lesson is, and it's really something we already knew, is that our broadband access in Arkansas is not sufficient for all communities. When something like this happens and you have to shift, not just for education, but with telemedicine or other forms of interaction that's so important now within our society. And so that's an area that I know the governor is very dedicated to addressing, the legislature is dedicated to addressing, and I think we have now providers who definitely have a better understanding of the impact that has in our communities.
Is super interesting from my perspective is you have, in some cases, parents and teachers and school systems arguing for and preparing to enact widespread virtual learning. And if you could roll the clock back 6-7 months, almost all of those same people would have been dead set against virtual learning. And I think that they would have been right to question it before, and may also be right to support it now.
Positives out of it, I think it's heightened the sense of awareness in terms of being able to really communicate with your public stakeholders within your school, and then really putting a spotlight on the needs in the community for internet connectivity. I think that'll be a major focus of all of us. I think having districts or making different opportunities and choices for parents within their community. They may be offering online or some kind of blended model. So I think that's that could be a potential positive if done right within the district to attract families to districts and giving them options and how they get their education. So I think those are some definite positives. I think some negative long-term effects is that you're going to have a lot of parents that are very anxious about returning to school, and whether they make a choice to homeschool or to seek an alternative type of school to go to. I think that could have a negative impact on school numbers next year, which always ties to district funding. And so you could have a scenario where a large amount of students don't return to a district next year.
I mean, immediately we think about the learning loss students have had since having to leave the classroom in March till now. In the summer you do expect a level of learning loss, but this is a much longer period of time than we're used to, right? So from March to August, that learning loss is going to be significant. So I think we really need to work to identify, remediation for students, and we have to forgive ourselves in this pandemic, where we kind of understand, okay, so if the reading level should be here, but it's not because they've lost 6 months of school, we have to forgive ourselves and figure out what the process is to remediate those kids who've suffered the learning loss. And we can't punish them, and we can't punish the educators, because the entire community has suffered loss, right? And the work needs to be around how we get them back up to where they can be or should be.
It's going to be interesting to see the impact on education for the future. I worry I'm no longer I'm not around the kids every day anymore. I'm in a different world right now.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen to the education programs in colleges and universities. I've talked to some of the younger people, and they said, well, if I didn't have, my whole point of going to education was having access to those kindergarten and first graders. Talking about elementary teachers. My wife is a retired elementary teacher. One of the big things was a hug every day, for those little kids as they would come through the door, making sure they were accepted.
Yeah.
That was a big part of hers. She said she would have a big problem in just trying to see kids through a computer screen. The profession would not be near as attractive to her without that personal connection with kids. And we've had conversations. Well, the connection's just got to be made in a different way.
I know a lot of people who are, of retirement age and had never thought that they'd retire. They're like, I'm 45, I don't need to retire, but they've got their time in, and now they're looking at this going, I'm afraid to go back in the classroom.
Another thing that I think is a good benefit of this disruption to the normal thing is that I think it's a good opportunity for parents to get more involved in what their student is learning in school, and they sort of have to do that because they'll be at home and learn, but also to advocate for their kids if they see that the work that their student is being asked to do is too challenging for their student or too easy for their student. They now have more of a direct line to the teacher than maybe they had before to sort of discuss what the plan is to address those issues on either side. And because parents are there while their students are working on online programs, or there's some facilitator adult there in many cases, it creates an opportunity that wasn't there as easily before for parents to recognize what their students' school experience is.